The CEO cried at the all hands. Actual tears, crocodile and everything. Said something like, "You're not just employees, you're my family," while his voice cracked like a badly compressed MP3. Then, not 24 hours later, he cut our dental. Swear to God. I found out when I showed up for a routine cleaning, and the receptionist looked at me like I'd handed her a Blockbuster card. That was the moment I knew something in this company was broken, something deeper than just the code base. We all laughed it off in Slack, made memes about the CEO's emotional intelligence, and called it corporate gaslighting. But it wasn't funny. Not really. Not when I was the one duct taping backend memory leaks in the middle of the night while he flew first class to secure partnerships with crypto bros in Dubai. I didn't join this startup to babysit a narcissist with a VC fetish. I joined because I believed in the product. Silly me, I'd been with the company 4 years. That's basically a presidential term in tech years. I came in fresh from a failing fintech job with a box of ramen, a busted laptop, and enough caffeine in my bloodstream to reanimate a corpse. I stayed late. I debugged code no one else could touch. I mentored juniors. I held hands through every rushed Friday deploy that risked taking us offline. If the company was a sinking ship, I was the sad sailor below deck patching the hull with chewed gum and prayer. And I did it all without ever demanding credit, while the CEO strutted on LinkedIn about our incredible engineering team like he knew what an API key was. Real quick, since you're already this deep into my digital therapy session, maybe do me a tiny solid? Tap that subscribe button. Like 97% of folks who listen to these stories don't follow. And I'm trying to hit my first 10,000 subscribers so I can tell my parents I finally built something that doesn't crash. Help a girl out? Anyway, I should have known better than to buy into the family BS. Real families don't run you into burnout, gut your PTO policy, then post inspirational quotes about grit from some ex-Navy SEAL they met at a silent retreat. There were signs, sure. Time they laid off our QA team and told us it was a chance to grow cross-functionally. The time they said health insurance premiums were being optimized and half the team suddenly had deductibles the size of used Hondas. But I was still in the trenches, still loyal, even as my resentment grew like mold in a forgotten lunchbox. I told myself I was staying for the team. That was true mostly. I loved my team. They were scrappy and brilliant and barely paid. We all knew the platform was being held together by half-finished modules and fragile integrations. The code base was like a haunted house built on spaghetti. Every commit was a gamble. But we cared. We fought to keep it alive. One night, after another 2 a.m. deploy caused by the CEO promising a critical feature to a new client without asking engineering, I sat staring at the error logs and thought, this isn't how it's supposed to be. And right then, right in that exhausted, coffee-stained haze, I started copying things. Not code, not IP, just artifacts, screenshots of ignored security flags, Jira tickets marked won't fix because they delay launch, Slack threads where I literally said, this will become a compliance issue and got a grimacing face emoji in response. It wasn't malicious. It was insurance, a lifeboat. I told myself it was just in case, that I'd never need it. I didn't know that day was closer than I thought, because the next chapter, it doesn't start with a meeting. It starts with a silent lockout. The first time I flagged the memory leak, it was just a blip in the logs. A quiet little warning, like the early rattles in a dying engine. Nothing catastrophic yet, just a backend module quietly ballooning usage under high concurrency. The kind of issue that doesn't kill your platform immediately, bleeds you out one slow request at a time. I filed the Jira ticket, tagged it appropriately, added notes, screenshots, metrics, even ran a simulated load test to show the pattern. Took me 6 hours to replicate the exact conditions that caused it. I titled it Urgent, Backend Memory Management, Leak Under Load Potential Data Risk. That was me being diplomatic. What I wanted to call it was your future lawsuit in progress. A week later, the ticket was marked low priority and tagged with the internal label we all hated, Tech Debt Backlog Q4. Translation, we'll fix it never. I asked our CTO Jonah about it in stand-up. He blinked like he didn't remember what a memory leak was, said, let's focus on shipping features, not hypotheticals. Hypotheticals. Like it was a conspiracy theory I made up between sips of stale Red Bull. I could have screamed. Then came the real punch, Ricky. One of our junior devs, barely a year in, bright kid, still believed feedback mattered, tried to re-raise the issue during a product review call. Said he was worried user session data might persist longer than it should under load. Polite, factual, helpful. The next day, he got pulled into a career guidance meeting and was told he lacked alignment with product priorities. They took him off backend tasks for a month. Gave him Jira janitor duty, typo fixes, button colors, the digital equivalent of licking envelopes. That's when I knew this place didn't want problems solved. It wanted them buried in the sandbox with the other skeletons. I pulled Ricky aside and told him not to take it personally, that he did the right thing. But I could see the gears turning in his head, same gears I'd worn down years ago. He still thought reason might win. I didn't have the heart to tell him, reason doesn't pay for Teslas in this company. Optics do. Meanwhile, the leaks kept popping. We'd run high-traffic promos or investor demos, and you'd see the backend gasp for air like it was drowning in its own processes. I patched what I could, refactored core modules under the radar. Didn't even log half of it, I just pushed silent fixes into the branches nobody reviewed anyway. I was holding the whole damn foundation together with duct tape, chewed gum, and a whisper of faith. When I brought it up again in a roadmap meeting, Jonas smiled like I'd told a bad joke. Monica, you've got to pick your battles, he said, tapping his iPad like he was too busy to care. We're a startup. We move fast. We break things. I wanted to ask him if he planned to break federal compliance too. Because what we were doing, letting old sessions linger in volatile memory, crossing over into other user contexts during memory spikes, wasn't just sloppy. It was dangerous. But I didn't say that. Not yet. I just nodded, went back to my desk, and renamed my growing documentation folder from logs to cover your ass. Because I knew now this company wouldn't fire you for being wrong. They'd fire you for being right too soon. They called it a game changer in the Slack announcement, complete with a rocket emoji and a gif of Elon Musk awkwardly dancing. A massive government-adjacent contract, locked in after 6 months of sales calls and PowerPoint theater. 8 figures, multi-year commitment, plus bragging rights for our CEO, who'd now get to call himself a federal contractor at his next TEDx talk. There was just one catch, full-stack compliance certification. We're talking SOC 2, ISO 27001, GDPR, and a cherry on top called FedRAMP Moderate. Real compliance. Not the wishful kind. The kind that involves deep audits, third-party pen tests, and written proof that you didn't build your infrastructure on spit and startup dreams. I was in the conference room when they broke the news. CTO Jonah had that fake relaxed posture, feet up on the table like he was auditioning for a failed Netflix drama about programmers. We've got 6 weeks, he said, spinning a stress ball like it owed him rent. Plenty of time. I didn't laugh. 6 weeks wasn't enough to document the existing system, let alone fix it. We were running outdated containers, storing logs in plain text on a shared S3 bucket, and still using a custom auth module that hadn't been reviewed since Trump was in office. So I did what I always did. Opened a new Google Doc, titled it Compliance Action Plan Internal Review Only, and began writing. I didn't just list bugs. I listed systemic rot, unencrypted session tokens in local storage, inconsistent logging practices, zero RBAC enforcement across admin APIs, a fragile CI/CD pipeline that could be hijacked with 3 lines of shell script. I backed every bullet point with links, screenshots, or code snippets. I referenced prior tickets, ignored, postponed, buried. I even included estimates for fixes. Honest ones, not Jonah's magical thinking. 3 days later, I emailed the memo to leadership. Subject line, immediate engineering gaps for upcoming compliance audit. No drama, just facts. I even thanked them for prioritizing security at this stage in our growth, which is startup speak for I know you're faking this, but I'm still pretending you care. Jonah replied 20 minutes later, not thank you, not let's discuss. Just appreciate the deep dive, let's not over-engineer this. Get us certified on paper. On paper, that phrase sat in my inbox like an oil slick. I stared at it, reread it, copied it to a notepad. Then I opened my encrypted personal drive and saved the memo in a folder called Liability Buffer Phase 1. I printed a hard copy too, just for good measure. There's something comforting about ink when your world runs on vanish-at-will pixels. The mood around the office turned manic. Product and marketing were already drafting launch copy for the secured for government version of the app. Meanwhile, I was patching brittle logic written by engineers who'd been laid off or quit without documentation. Nobody slowed down. Nobody asked how we'd pass inspection. They just assumed I'd magic it clean like always. So I smiled, nodded, and let them believe that. Let them believe in the lie. Because that's when I stopped trying to save them. That's when I started building my receipt archive. It was 2:38 a.m. when the pager went off, one of those production alerts that hits like a cold slap in the face. Session validation failure. Users getting bounced mid-transaction. Europe was already awake and pissed, and our biggest client, some payment processor with a fetish for uptime, was threatening SLA penalties by the minute. I jumped on Zoom in a hoodie and pajama pants, eyes bloodshot, fingers shaking from the third Red Bull. Ricky was already in the logs, bless him, and Grace was rerouting traffic manually. We traced it to a malformed token handler, some dusty function nobody had touched since before the pandemic. A legacy Frankenstein patch from a contractor we never rehired. It was leaking data and crashing requests under load. It took us 5 hours and 2 deploys to patch it. 5 hours of unpaid firefighting while leadership slept soundly in their million-dollar homes. At 7:12 a.m., we pushed a fix that stabilized the backend. I sent out a quiet internal update, issue resolved, RCA pending. Then I collapsed on my couch and stared at the ceiling like it owed me answers. By noon, there was a calendar invite waiting in my inbox. No subject, no agenda. Just a link and 2 names, HR Evelyn and CTO Jonah. No CEO, no thank you, just dread. I didn't shower, I didn't eat. I clicked the link on my dying laptop, already suspecting what was coming. I just didn't expect how clinical it would be. Evelyn's smile was the kind that had been trained in an HR seminar. Flat, rehearsed, and useless. Jonah didn't even bother looking at the camera. He had that look on his face, the one where he pretends to be distracted so he can act like this isn't his fault. Like he's not the one pulling the lever behind the guillotine. Monica, thanks for joining. We know this is short notice. I didn't hear the rest. Because the moment I joined the call, my Git credentials deauthenticated. Slack kicked me. Jira logged out. I watched my access evaporate in real time like I was being exorcised from my own damn creation. Due to restructuring and shifting business priorities, your role is being eliminated effective immediately. This isn't a reflection of your contributions. We appreciate everything you've done. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I just blinked at Evelyn's teeth, perfectly aligned like the words she read from a script. What happens to the compliance certification? I asked just to see Jonah flinch. He coughed. We've got it under control. Right, no severance, no thank you, just a generic HR offboarding packet that looked like it had been printed in 2018. I closed the tab before they finished talking. My hands moved on their own, muscle memory and spite. I booted my backup laptop, the one they didn't know existed. I connected to my offline vault, downloaded my final documentation snapshot, code discrepancies, audit trail gaps, timestamped Jira threads, ignored RFCs, compliance warnings. The full gospel. I encrypted it, split it into 2 drives, one in the fire safe under my bed, one on a flash drive duct-taped under my desk drawer at home. Then I sat back and stared at my black screen. They didn't just fire me, they erased me. And now I was going to teach them what happens when the person holding the duct tape walks away. The day after they fired me, I didn't touch my laptop, didn't rage post on LinkedIn, didn't subtweet the CEO, didn't even tell my team what happened. I let the silence stretch like cooling lava, slow, heavy, full of things about to burn. Instead, I took a walk. Just me, black coffee, and the brittle Ohio wind slicing through my coat like betrayal through bone. I walked past the diner I used to hit after late-night deployments, past the gym I paid for but never used, past the cheap little bar where we once toasted a product launch that barely cleared QA. All of it felt like a simulation I'd finally woken up from. When I got home, I turned off my phone and sat in the dark with a legal pad. Not because I needed to write, I already had everything, but because I needed to see it, to lay it out like puzzle pieces soaked in gasoline. I started indexing. Every ignored security flag I'd logged in Jira, cross-referenced with dates and developers. Every Slack thread where I'd raised red flags, only to be hit with a thumbs-up emoji and silence. Every memo marked resolved with no commits to show for it. I tagged them by severity, made a spreadsheet. Then I opened the whistleblower thread. I'd been CC'd months ago on an internal email from a junior analyst, Sarah, flagging that our dev logs were storing full OAuth tokens. Unencrypted, logged, on a third-party service with no SOC 2 compliance. Her email vanished from the thread after one reply from the CTO, "Let's take this offline." She left the company a week later. Nobody talked about it. I added it to the archive. Then I opened our public terms of service. Line by line, slow, surgical, like gutting a fish. And there it was. Section 14.2.2. Company affirms end-user data is never stored in third-party services without anonymization and encryption, in accordance with industry best practices. I knew the integration that violated that clause. I had screenshots of the exact endpoint. I had Git commits that patched it only after pressure from a partner. And I had the revert logs when they quietly rolled it back to save money on compute cycles. They didn't just forget, they chose it. By midnight, I had a folder labeled Strike Kit. Not labeled Revenge, not Whistleblower. Just Strike Kit, like a bomb waiting for a wire to be pulled. Inside, CVE draft template list of third-party clients affected timestamp documentation contract clauses violated evidence of internal knowledge and suppression. I still hadn't spoken a word. No DMs, no emails, no hints. My team thought I was taking time off. Maybe I'd start freelancing. Maybe I'd take a break. That's what fired engineers do, right? Post a soft goodbye and pivot to consultant. Not me. I was no longer playing the part of good soldier. I was something else now. The duct tape was off, and I was sharpening the blade. It hit me like a punchline with a body count. I was halfway through alphabetizing breach timestamps when the press release landed in my inbox, forwarded by a friend still trapped inside the circus tent. The subject line, CEO announces federal partnerships, touts platform as flawless. I clicked the link with the same energy you'd open a suspicious package marked live snake inside. And there he was. That smug avatar of startup rot, standing in front of a stock photo data center, arms folded like he personally invented cybersecurity. Talking to some eager journalist about how our platform was battle-tested, trusted by several government entities, and built with privacy-first architecture. Privacy first. This was a platform that logged user tokens to an unencrypted third-party logger. A platform that allowed expired sessions to be silently rehydrated on shared threads. a platform that I'd once patched in secret at 3 o'clock a.m. because the CTO was too busy golfing with investors to review my pull request. And now it was flawless. That word flipped something in me. Not rage, not even vengeance, just clarity, like snapping out of a fever dream. The lies were no longer corporate nonsense, they were public. Auditable, traceable, subject to scrutiny, which meant one thing: it was time. I reopened the folder labeled Strike Kit and duplicated its contents to a clean drive, not a backup, a deployment. Then I downloaded the latest CVE submission template. For the uninitiated, CVE stands for Common Vulnerabilities and Exposures. It's how the security world keeps score. Each submission is its own little monument to corporate negligence, filed publicly, indexed permanently. I didn't scream, I didn't call the press, I did what I was best at. I documented 3 pages, clinical, brutal, precise, no accusations, just data. Vulnerability summary, steps to reproduce expected vs actual behavior, potential exposure window, affected component systems known to be impacted log evidence, with timestamps internal Slack thread IDs, confirming awareness memo metadata from the compliance plan that was ignored. I didn't say they knew. I didn't need to. The submission spoke for itself. The details told the story. The cross-references nailed the coffin, even included a redacted timeline showing multiple clients who would have been affected had I not personally intervened with hotfixes that never made it into official release notes. Before I sent it off, I reread everything. 3 times, no bloat, no speculation, just weaponized facts. I wrapped it in professional courtesy and sent it to an independent watchdog org that specialized in vulnerability indexing and third-party disclosures. It wasn't a hit piece, it was a mirror. Then, without fanfare, I posted a short message on an old security dev forum I used to haunt. Noticed a vulnerability in a platform recently featured in tech news could affect third-party integrations and data integrity under load. Disclosure filed via CVE process. Details pending. No hashtags, no names, no shade, just breadcrumbs, enough for the right people to find it. And once they started sniffing, be no putting the blood back in the stone. At 9:42 a.m. on a cloudy Tuesday, I clicked submit. No fireworks, no dramatic music, just the silent flick of a mousepad and the soft whir of my laptop fan, like the universe exhaling through a grin. The CVE form went through clean, no red flags, no follow-up questions, not even a raised eyebrow from the security watchdog I'd submitted it to. Just a confirmation email with a tracking number and a timestamp that now belonged to history. It read like a death certificate. CVE 2025 to 19,117 submitted by independent researcher status, published severity, high description, improper session lifecycle management, leading to potential user impersonation in multi-threaded environments. FEX redacted SAS platform v3.2.1 to v3.9.7. I read it twice, then sat back in my chair, feeling the caffeine settle somewhere behind my sternum. It wasn't adrenaline, it wasn't guilt, it was peace. Cold, crisp, mathematical peace, but I wasn't done. I opened Twitter not from my old account, a clean one. Fresh, no face, no followers, just a single post waiting to be born. I wrote, noticed a significant security issue in a platform currently used by several public sector clients. Might impact third-party integrations. CVE details. Link. Then I tagged 5 journalists, not small-time bloggers, the real ones, the kind who smell smoke before there's fire. 1 from Wired, 1 from The Verge, 2 from security-focused newsletters, and 1 wildcard who'd written a profile piece on our CEO last year titled The Visionary Behind the Code. Let's see how visionary he looks in infrared. I didn't add commentary. Didn't say this is my former company or they fired me last week. Just dropped the facts like seeds on fertile ground. The algorithm would do the rest. It always does. And then I waited. Not in dread, not in eagerness. I made a sandwich, watered my plants, cleaned a drawer that hadn't seen daylight since Obama was in office. The whole time my phone sat face down, silent, buzzing every so often, then quiet again. They hadn't noticed yet. That much I knew. Corporate inertia is slow to panic. My guess? The CEO was on some dumb panel somewhere talking about scaling with soul. Jonah was probably clicking through spreadsheets trying to find ways to fire more people without losing Slack access. They thought they'd won. They had no clue the knife was already in. Not screaming, not slashing. Just bleeding slowly from a wound they couldn't see yet, but they would. Oh, they would. It started as a whisper, a flicker in the digital wind. On Wednesday morning, Ricky, bless his cautious little heart, texted me a screenshot of a recruiter's message on LinkedIn. It said, "Hi, noticed your background with company, curious if you're aware of any upcoming structural shifts there. There's chatter in our circles about some security turbulence." I stared at it with my thumb hovering over the keyboard. Didn't type back, didn't have to. By noon, Grace messaged too. Did something happen? A client just asked me if our backend is stable and compliant. Nobody said anything, but something's off. Something was off. There's silence. The delay, that sticky, panicked hush that creeps in before a building realizes it's already on fire. That afternoon, small federal agency suspended its API access. Not terminated, just paused pending security reevaluation. The kind of pause that hits harder than a cancellation. It means lawyers, paper trails, phone calls with phrases like exposure liability and failure to disclose. Then the blogs came. First, a paragraph on zero-day dispatch, nestled between a headline about ransomware in Norway and an ad for a VPN you'd never trust. And Tech Radar Pulse picked it up. They didn't even need to dig. The CVE submission had everything gift-wrapped with tags. They just added their flair. High-risk exposure on fast-growing SAW Darling could impact dozens of B2B clients. The word darling was doing a lot of heavy lifting. By evening, it hit TechCrunch. That's when the CEO finally surfaced like a corpse bobbing up in a stagnant pond. He tweeted, "We take security seriously. Patch is already underway. Our commitment to our clients remains our top priority." 29 words of wet cardboard, no apology, no ownership, just panic in a tailored suit. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. I was sitting on my porch by then, one leg tucked under me, the other resting against a chipped planter full of dying basil. Coffee in hand, lukewarm, with that bitter bite I like. The fall air was crisp, laced with just enough rot to remind me the year was decaying. My phone lit up every 15 seconds. Ping, buzz, ping, unknown number, Grace again. A random tech reporter offering to hear my side. Jonah, that one I blocked. I didn't answer a single one. Because the beauty of a trap is watching it spring without touching a damn thing. This wasn't rage. This wasn't a tantrum. This was orchestral. I'd spent 4 years swallowing the blame for their laziness, cleaning up code they never read, fixing flaws they refused to see, pulling all-nighters to keep their investor decks from imploding. And now the world was seeing the product as it actually was, not the shiny, buzzword-crusted, feature-bloated fairytale, but the rotting, rushed, stitched-together facade barely holding itself upright. And the best part? I didn't have to say a word, because the truth was already screaming. It hit the wire at 6:03 a.m. the following Monday. An investigative piece tucked into the markup's front page, titled, "A Culture of Silence?" Inside the security negligence of a rising tech giant. And beneath that headline, surgical, cold, unrelenting truth, screenshots of internal Slack threads, JIRA tickets marked won't fix, compliance memos timestamped and ignored, emails with my old subject lines, OAuth token logging urgent, audit risk ahead of client onboarding, escalating session memory behavior. My fingerprints were nowhere. Every file submitted anonymously, scrubbed, rerouted through dead-end accounts and open-source anonymizers. No IP trail, no breadcrumbs, just receipts. And it was enough. The article dropped names, quoted timelines, compared statements made by executives against decisions recorded internally. One paragraph listed exact vulnerabilities that lined up perfectly with the CVE I filed. Another pointed out that the company continued onboarding government clients after being warned about potential exposure. I didn't write the article. I didn't give them a quote. I just handed them the matchbook and let them find the gasoline. By noon, two venture capital firms quietly paused their funding rounds. One released a generic statement about reassessing strategic alignment. Internally, they were hemorrhaging. An anonymous employee posted to Blind that hiring had frozen. One of the government agencies issued a formal request for security disclosures. And then came the real shot across the bow. A Reddit thread surfaced on /r/legal advice with the title, "Can a software platform be sued for failing to disclose known vulnerabilities before onboarding clients?" It was vague, hypothetical. But in the comments, legal eagles were already quoting class action case law and tossing around phrases like material non-disclosure and gross negligence. The wolves had caught the scent. And the CEO? Oh, bless him. He issued a desperate LinkedIn post at 2:17 p.m. Long, rambling, polished by legal, soulless to the bone. In recent days, our company has been the target of misleading narratives driven by disgruntled ex-employees. We are committed to transparency, security, and the well-being of our clients. These allegations do not reflect our current standards or practices. He was trying to spin it, trying to build a lifeboat from PR soundbites. Didn't work, because one of our former engineers, a quiet guy named Devin who never used to speak unless the coffee machine was broken, commented publicly, "She wasn't disgruntled. She was the only one doing your job. 5,000 likes in 2 hours, 30 shares. 3 tech blogs picked it up and ran headlines like "Former Employee Blows Whistle on Toxic Tech Culture." Only they didn't name me because nobody could. I was the shadow between lines of code, the duct tape they dismissed, the archivist they fired while standing on a foundation I'd kept from collapse. I never made a sound, and now with the storm howling around them I still didn't speak. Didn't need to. I sat on my porch again, same chair, colder air this time. Leaves skittered across the concrete like whispers. My coffee was black and still steaming. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed thin and hollow. I watched the CEO's name trend, watched investors distance themselves, watched the story fracture across platforms like a stress crack through glass. And I smiled, not wide, not loud, just enough, because this wasn't revenge. It was recognition. And it was finally quiet. Thanks for watching, you cubicle warriors. Hit that subscribe button. Unless you're my old boss, then you're on your own. Revenge of the coffee pot strikes again.